Hey everybody, it's Brian Icenhower. Welcome. Today I'm kind of excited because what we are going to do is we are going to put together a detailed real estate industry update for 2024 that is through the entire first quarter. So we are now through the first 3 months of the year. We've got the data after those first 3 months, and that way you can use all of these slides and information and statistics to help you guys in as real estate agents and real estate professionals explain the market conditions to your clients. You might do that on social media with some of these slides. You might do this, in buyer consultation appointments. You might use some of these slides and charts in your listing consultation appointments, just to give, to do your due diligence and to advise your clients on what is currently happening in the real estate market. So without further ado, I thought I'd jump right into it. We are going to start, and we have a course at Icenhower Consulting that is our industry update, and this is the Q2 industry update because we are now through Q1, right? So you can see that this is the cover page of all the slides. They're downloadable for all of our clients and those that subscribe to our courses that are in our online community. So if you're seeing this and you don't and you don't have these slides, go to eisenhowercoaching.com and join our community so you can access all this stuff on a regular basis. We're going to start with sales, home sales first. So let's talk about that. This is the annual U.S. home sales going back all the way to 1992 here. And you can see these numbers are in millions across the top. But you can see in 2024, we are now projecting a slight uptick in sales compared to what was a rather relatively disappointing last year, where in 2023, we only had 4.1 million single family home sales in the United States after two very steep declines, right? You can see, after the COVID pandemic boom, 2021 had 6.1 million home sales. And then, the following year in 2022, we saw rates tick up in spring of that year. So home sales dropped a significant amount. And then they dropped again in 2023. But as rates have stabilized and people are just getting used to those housing rates, and we're seeing a little bit more inventory come onto the market, at least, you can see that we are now projecting an increase this year based on the same trend in the first quarter of 2024. Believe it or not, we've seen more sales in the first quarter of 2024 now. Okay. And just to kind of keep this into perspective, you can go back to the housing boom where we saw 2004, 5, 6, and 7, where we saw a lot more home sales, all the way up to 7.1 million home sales in 2005. And we had a steep drop all the way down to the very, very bottom of home sales, 4.1 million, which is exactly what mirrored 2023, about 4.1 million home sales. The difference is we have a lot more humans in the country now. So buyer demand is a lot higher and the inventory is a lot lower as a result. So those home sales are much different. Then in 2008, we had signs up everywhere, not enough buyers to buy them. Now, 4.1 million home sales. We have very few signs and tons of buyers who want to buy them despite increased mortgage rates. So kind of interesting flip-flop there, but still about the same amount of sales. And we're projecting a significant recovery, thankfully, based on the start of this first quarter. Okay, moving forward, total sales volume, it kind of mirrors the same, right? This is sales volume is when we add up all the purchase or the sales prices of all the homes. Because of a huge increase in appreciation, you can see that 2021's number was much higher than 2025. Why? Home prices have gone up significantly over that period of time, right? After that dip in 2008 we talked about, you could see prices dropped a little bit more following that. Then all of a sudden, home prices just started climbing over what I call the decade of indulgence. We had almost 10 years of just real consistent, steep home price appreciation, which we'll show you in a little bit. And now you can see sales volume went up very high in 2022 and it just steadily dropped just like the units did. And now we're projecting, based on those increases in sales for the first quarter of 2024, a steady increase. We're going to look at almost $2.3 trillion in home sales, or what we're currently projecting for 2024 based upon the Q1 numbers. Moving forward, new home sales. You can see with new home sales, same idea here. New home sales over the years have increased. This is new construction, right? Brand new purchased homes as opposed to resale, okay? Same thing, reached a peak in 2020, a little bit earlier than 2021. Why? Builders stopped building in 2021 when COVID hit. Things, the cost of labor went up. People were sheltering in place and couldn't build homes. The cost of wood went up. Remember all the supply chain problems. So new home sales dropped tremendously because they just weren't building anymore. And we're finally recovering on that end, and we're seeing those go up a little bit more. Okay. All the while, we're seeing the average home prices in America continue to increase over time. Okay. Yet supply is just not keeping up. Boy, is that the theme of the day. Okay. Now, the NAR pending home sales index. This is basically homes that are under contract. Okay, so pending home sales are homes that we got an offer and acceptance, but they haven't yet closed, and we can kind of see the future. And this looks a little dismal here because we're looking at January of each year, and home sales are going to be at their lowest in January of each year. And in January of 2024, we did have an abnormally low amount of home sales pending in January. The good news is in February, it picked up tremendously, and same with March. That's why we're still predicting an increase in sales. But if we're comparing January to January, high interest rates coupled with very low inventory has created a very low pending home sales index for the start of 2024. And that also correlates with having very high interest rates, a spike in interest rates in the start of January. It wasn't until interest rates started to relax shortly thereafter did those sales start picking up. Percentage of distressed property sales, this is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, yes, there was no distressed sales in 2021, 22, but this is so abnormally low. We're looking at like 2%. So, I mean, that's much less than there had been in years past. So the idea that a bunch of foreclosures are coming is next to insanity. We're not even up to a healthy number of foreclosures. A healthy number of foreclosures, an industry average is like 5%, 6%, somewhere between 5 and 10%. We just have a low amount of that. And that's simply because the fact everybody has so much equity in their home because home prices have continued to increase despite, low inventory, despite high mortgage rates, despite everything. That lack of supply has led prices to go up. So it's kind of hard for properties to be foreclosed upon when prices keep going up. Everybody has equity and is able to sell them. So no shockers there, in my opinion. Average days on the market, believe it or not, we are seeing that go nice and down again because of that low inventory, right? So this is pretty seasonable here. Usually, we have a high days on market in the winter months, and then in the summer, low days on market. Because spring and summer, everyone's buying, and then in the winter, high days on market, and then it goes down. Now, the difference here is then we had COVID when everybody went home buying crazy, and there was a crazy shortage of homes. So we almost skipped the spike in 2001, right? We almost skipped that spike, and then we skipped it again because COVID persisted for a year and a half throughout the country. So there was almost no spike for 2 years, but then we got back to normal. And in 2023, days on market went up in the winter. Here's what's interesting though. All of a sudden we look like we're skipping the spike again because now we're into January of 2024, and things are selling rapidly right now throughout the entire first quarter of 2024. So it really sets itself up for a very hot real estate market in the spring and summer in Q2 and Q3. Because, man, property is moving and buyers are ready to buy. So they have gotten used to the new higher mortgage interest rates than what they were used to previously. And they're ready to buy. They're tired of waiting. They've learned, I'm going to buy the house before it goes up in price anymore. I can always refinance later if I need to. That's what that tells me. So kind of exciting for this spring and summer. Now let's move over to home prices. We covered sales. Let's move over to home prices. Move over to home prices. We can look, this might shock some of you. I love showing this to people because we can look at annual home prices over the course of a 12-year period, which I love to look at. Too often the media talks about prices going up and down because it's based on month-to-month data. And I'm going to show you in a bit why that's not the way to look at home prices, because that will confuse you. Because a lot of you think home prices went down in 2022 and 2023, and you can see they didn't. But yet the market was saying it, the media was saying it all over the place. You can see home prices were very steady after prices jumped significantly over that decade of indulgence I told you about, where home prices just kept going up and up and up and up. Then we hit COVID and people went just absolutely nuts. I mean, huge price jumps for 2 years. You had to shelter in place and people put a high value on shelter. So they jumped up for 2 or 3 years, and then everybody thought they came back down. Well, to be honest with you, the average median home price did not come down. It stayed pat. You can see here, this is in terms of thousands. The average median home price peaked at 386, but did it peak? Because then in 2023, it went up to 389, even when mortgage interest rates went up. And we're projecting another increase of $390,000 for a median home price by the end of 2024. And I think that's being conservative. That's my number. And that's based on home price increases year over year through Q1. I think that could be higher. I can't wait to do this again in a few months and see if we can adjust that up. But I like to be conservative on this. But you can see all that marketing report. It's like, wow, I thought they were prices about home prices going down. Well, that's because they were looking at month to month, and I'll be able to explain that very, very shortly. Okay, so let's look at it. The average median home price going back a little bit further on this line chart. This is my favorite chart. You can go all the way back to 1955 here, and you can see that over the years, housing prices have always gone up. Even if we look at that dip that happened in the Great Recession that bottomed out down at 2008, you can see it just looks like a minor blip. And then despite everything else that's happened, we got a few things in here, maybe a COVID in here somewhere, and then boom, housing prices have just kind of languished off in kind of a flat valley and just starting to tick up again, right? So all that, market price volatility everybody's talking about, we just didn't see it in the market. And if you don't believe me, just think about your local market and think about putting a house up for sale that's around the median home price. And you'll see there'll be a lot of, you're going to get multiple offers typically in most places in the country, So, and that's how we base home prices, off a median sales price. Yes, luxury may have pulled back over the last couple of years, or unique properties or things like that, commercial properties. But the average home in America, home prices have gone up. And if we're going to talk about home prices, we've got to talk about the majority of them. And that's what we're doing. Okay. Annual appreciation of home prices. Okay. So this is how much home prices went up in value each year. I love this chart as well. And you can see even last year in 2023 with those high rates and low inventory, prices almost went up 1%. Okay. Look what happened though in the middle of the pandemic. They went up 18.2% in 1 year. And the year before, 9.1%. If you can imagine that. The historic average, they always say, is somewhere around 4% a year. But again, that does, usually has a lot of volatility. Even way back in the Great Recession, you can see it only lasted for a few years. I mean, there were some pretty bad ones though, right? 2008 and 9, Lehman Brothers was going under, all the banks were closing, and you could see, man, home prices really dropped for 2 years. But other than that, we were pretty, relatively level during those times. Then prices started coming back fast. I mean, most people had their equity back by 2013 and 14, and they were above water again. It's a shame all those people, lost their homes to foreclosure in that time. If they had just been able to hang on a little bit longer, the market corrects that. And again, that hadn't happened for about, 100 years. I showed you the chart before about going back to 1950. That was the first blip right in here, right around 2008 and 9 that we saw it, okay? And then prices came right back. Now we've seen 2.9, and we're looking at maybe a 2.4% increase in 2024. If we get a lot of inventory, that'll be even higher, because more inventory just means more sales, and more sales mean more comps, and more comps mean appraisers can move prices up a lot faster. So more sales makes prices move faster. Less inventory creates supply side pricing with a strong seller's market, and they will ask for more money. And that's why that typically works, right? So we're projecting that based on what we've seen in Q1. We've seen prices in Q1 2024 be higher than they were in 2023, therefore at a more rapid price increase. Moving on. This is one thing I want you to see, the 50-year average monthly price movement. You can see that in certain months of the year, prices increase a lot more than other months, okay? And that's because most sales happen in the spring and summer. So you can see there's more sales in the spring and summer. And higher priced homes typically go up for sale in the spring and summer. So prices increase a lot more over the spring and summer. And they increase a lot less in the fall and in the winter, okay? That's why we don't look at month over month pricing. Because they'll start to say in August to September, prices dropped by 50%, prices dropped by 20%, because month over month, they are dropping. Every year they do for seasonality. Why? Because the people in, the higher priced homes typically sell in the spring and summer months. Why? Because that's the time they can get the highest prices, and most buyers are looking, and kids are out of school, and houses look the best, and all that kind of stuff. People don't want to move as much during the holidays. So people with higher priced homes, they'll put their house up for sale then. That's when they want to move, and or they don't necessarily need to sell their home to buy a new one. So a lot of the high priced luxury homes are owned by people that can afford to have two mortgages at once. So they'll put their house up, they'll buy a home, move completely out of it, and wait and put their house up for sale in the spring and summer when they can get the highest price for it. So you'll see a lot more luxury sales. So prices aren't really dropping. You're just seeing less higher end homes selling in the winter and fall months. So don't get all caught up by all the news about price drops that typically happen in the fall and the winter, because that's why everybody was thinking prices were dropping when they weren't. They're like, how could prices be dropping when I'm still getting multiple offers on all my listings? Well, this is how, guys. It's the media not quite getting it. They're either being manipulative for clickbait, or they just don't truly get it. And if you're hearing this for the first time, then we can have some empathy for broadcast journalists that don't know anything about it. Because they don't know. Hopefully they watch this, right? Okay, let's talk about housing inventory, because this is what really controls prices. Supply and demand is the fundamental law, right? The more inventory there is, the less likely home prices are going to go up as fast, right? You can see when prices dropped, we had the most inventory, 2008. Why? There was lots of homes for sale and only a few buyers to buy them. Since then, it's been the exact opposite. We are well below the industry average. 6 months of inventory has always been considered the difference between a buyer's and a seller's market. What does 6 months of inventory means? It means at the current rate of sales, of all the listings on that were actively for sale, whether it be on the multiple listing service or otherwise, if all the homes that are actively for sale were to sell at the current rate of sales, it would take 6 months before they were all gone. Okay. Right now, at the current rate of sales, it would only take 3.1 months in 2023. We're projecting a little bit more inventory for 3.4. Why? People are used to rates. They're getting ready to move, so more houses will go on the market. Builders are getting a little more comfortable. They're building a few more homes. So we might get that much needed inventory to get us up to healthier levels where there are more sales, because we got to have, it takes two to tango. You got to have a listing to get a sale, right? There's tons of buyers who want to buy them despite the interest rates. That's why we're seeing multiple offers for, on all of our clients' listings across North America. So that the market can handle more inventory right now, that's for sure. And we are projecting an uptick in that as well too, like we had an uptick last year and the year before. But again, during the pandemic, we had some of the lowest historical inventory numbers there were. So understand that if you're complaining about inventory right now, it was much worse for the last 3 years. Okay, there is more inventory now than there was. In fact, there was more than 2020, which was a very good year. And we're not too far off from 2019, 2018. There's not a big difference here. So over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, there's not tremendous differences here in inventory. We've adopted, so complaining about inventory, this is our market right now. And it's probably not going to change for a long time, because it takes a long time in real estate to create inventory. You have to build houses, and that takes a very long time, especially when builders are still spooked by what happened back in the Great Recession. There aren't many national home builders even around, and they're spooked by interest rates and financing concerns and all that kind of stuff. So prices are likely to keep increasing for quite some time, right? You can see U.S. existing home inventory is very cyclical and seasonal, right? You see these little dips each year. That is basically lots of inventory in the summer and spring. Everybody pulls off in the winter. Lots of inventory in the summer, spring. Everybody pulls off in the winter. It just keeps dipping and dipping and dipping and dipping. And now we're starting to see it maybe tick up a little bit here in 2024, which is much welcomed. It's much welcome. We could actually get too healthy for home prices down here. We'd also like to have some sales, right? Why is housing inventory so low? I think this is my favorite chart. It explains. I mean, we had, back in the housing boom before the Great Recession, we were building at historically high levels. We oversupplied the market at a very high level. This is outrageous amounts of housing inventory. And so that was a big cause that people don't realize. They talk about, making loans that were, not even for real people and not having credit scores or all of that. And that's all true. That all happened. But remember, supply and demand is what controls prices, and supply side economics rules. So supply will always be more important than demand. So probably the most underrated contributing factor to that is we had way too many homes for sale, not enough buyers to buy them. And then all of a sudden people just stopped building, and actually the developers started going under and builders started going under and national housing builders started going under. And everybody got so afraid to build a house because there was so much inventory. We were building for 17 straight years below the historic average. I mean, literally, can you imagine that? This is the average of homes built in this year. And for 17 years, we weren't building enough. That is how we've got a shortage. We overcorrected through fear. We used to build hundreds of houses at a time. Now we build one at a time, right? Underbuilding left us with a multi-year inventory deficit that's going to take many years to get out of. We're not even close. Not even close. Look at this too. Homes built versus population growth. Every year, we usually, going all the way back to the 1930s was the last time in the Great Depression this happened, right? That was about every 100 years we have a great housing price drop. And it was in the 1930s, and this year was, this time around it was in 2008. So almost 100 years exactly. We had less houses and a lot, built compared to the people. But then after that, the 40s built about the same many houses as we made babies. The 50s built about as many houses as we made babies. And then pretty close every year thereafter, housing growth and baby growth was about the same until the 2010s. Why? Because 2008 and 9, we had a housing crash. Everybody got spooked. We stopped building houses, but we kept making babies like we do. And guess what? It's still the same problem in the 2020s. From 2020 to 2024, our population's growing at twice the rate that we're building houses. So we're actually getting worse and worse on the inventory thing. Buyer demand just getting huge, and they just, prices keep going up as a result. And more of these people can't afford houses. So houses are turning into diamonds, like they're very coveted all of a sudden to own one. It's kind of crazy, but that's how we know. And all these investors across the country know to buy more of them. New home starts, yes, we did, again, 2005, 6, 7, 8, they stopped building in the recession. And everybody was spooked for a while, and they gradually got their toes in the water and started building more and more and more and more. And then in 2021, we got all confident, but then COVID happened, and then the cost to build got really high and mortgage rates came up. So we're back to, in 2023, we actually built below the long-term average. Despite this glaring need to build more houses, mortgage rates and cost to build crushed them again. So here we are with a shortage of housing, and housing prices are going up as a result because that inventory is remaining historically low. 2024, we hope to get it up at least to the average line again. Based on Q1, we're looking like we might. Again, the cost of lumber is so much more. And this is just lumber. We're not talking about metal and nails and hammers and labor and all those things, right? But you can see that just 4 or 5 years ago, $50,000 could buy you more than 10 houses worth of lumber. Today, that same $50,000 would buy you a little more than 2 houses worth of lumber. 2,000. So, I mean, we're talking a huge difference on cost to build. And that just drives prices up as well, too, when the cost to build them goes up. Mortgages, boy, isn't that been the story of the last 2 years? Let's talk about mortgages as well, too. Annual rates, take a look at these dotted lines. These are important. You can see the historical average from over the past 50 years has been about 7.81%. And I'm so old, I practiced during a lot of the 80s and 90s and had to deal with those rates. That's the historic average, 7.81%. You can see in the 80s, the start of the 80s, we had up at 18.44% for a fixed year mortgage rate. And there, a good 10-year period, we were well up above 12%. We're talking about credit card numbers up there. If you look at the average from 1990 to 2020, we're looking at about a 6% average rate, okay? But then we got real spoiled. And from 2012 to 2021, we got used to something around 3.8 or 4%. Which is very, very crazy. So then when rates came up to more normal, healthy levels, it spooked everybody and sales did stop for a while. Although prices kept going up because there weren't many homes for sale. That thing got up well up, almost, up above 7%. And now it's kind of settled back down to 6.84%. One thing I don't do, guys, is I don't project mortgage interest rates because as you've been seeing in the recent news, they're very hard to predict. You're going to have to predict macroeconomics. My dad was in real estate for 50 years before he passed away about 15 years ago. And he was a very smart man. And one thing he told me was, Brian, don't you ever predict interest rates. They will kill you. If someone could predict interest rates, they would be a golden goose sitting in someone's closet. And that person that had them in the closet would be a trillionaire. Because no one can predict interest rates, as we've seen. You know, people saying they're going to go up by the end of this year. Now they're going to go up by the end of this year. Now they're going to go up, and they just keep not going up, or they just keep not coming down. And there's always a different reason based on inflation numbers or the jobs report or, you know, world wars or you name it. All those things can occur that are outside of our control that dictate what the feds are going to do to the federal funds and the federal discount rate, which the mortgage interest rate, you know, which is tied to a market algorithm based upon the movement and purchase and sales of 10-year treasury bonds, do. So please understand, we're not in control of the rates, and the Fed isn't either. They have to do based on macroeconomic events and as they occur. So it is what it is. Just know that rates are temporary, and prices, we can pretty much tell you, are going up. So if they ever come down to below this number again, you can always refinance. But my advice would be get in right now, because we know prices are going up, and rates could go up just as easily as they go down. So you'll be happy to lock in at a low 6.84%, for example. Either way, you can't lose on that. And understand that rising rates usually mean rising home prices. People think that when rates are going to go up, prices are going to go down because buyer demand is going to go down because they can't get loans. That has never been the case. That's why people focus on supply side economics first and foremost, right? Every period in history where rates went up significantly, home prices went up significantly. Why? Because rates go up when inflation goes up, because the Federal Reserve is trying to slow down the economy. And that way inflation slows down. Well, what is inflation called in real estate? It's called appreciation. So when inflation's up, typically housing prices are going up too. So understand, when rates go up, prices go up. As we have seen over the last few years, as we told you was going to happen over the last few years, rates went up, prices kept going up too. Okay? And that will continue to happen. So if rates jump again, understand that. Lately they've been stabilized. But we'll see. You never know. And if they do, don't freak out that that's going to drop prices. Don't get into that buyer side economics. It's never prevailed. It's always supply side economics, especially in real estate. So if the inventory is low, prices will go up. Period. End of report. Don't let anything else confuse you. Keep your blinders up. If inventory is low, if there is low supply, prices go up. That's rule number 101 of economics, and almost nothing can upset that rule. Okay? So just stay focused on it. I know it's boring and we want to buy all the clickbait saying prices can go down, but clearly they haven't. Household mortgage debt service. Understand, debt service has never been lower. I mean, the amount of debt people pay on as a percentage of their disposable income has never been lower. So people saying they can't afford all these houses, well, based on the income and all of the the increased wages people are making, and that's how we have inflation. That's evidence of inflation. The amount they're paying on their mortgage debt is actually very, very small, okay? Because, rates are relatively low compared to the last 50 years and have been, and they have tons of equity in their home as well, too. So the household mortgage debt service is very, very low as a percentage of disposable income compared to all of these years in the past, going all the way back here, to 1980, going back that far. Mortgage originations, this has been interesting. So this is very important for you to take a look at too. Mortgage originations by credit score. Take a look at this. This is the number of people that had 760 credit scores and above. And you can see during that COVID pandemic, everybody had great credit. From 2019 all the way moving into 2023, credit was very high. But with the increase in mortgage rates, you can see credit tightened on people. Rates went up, credit card debt went up, credit scores got a little worse. So you can see people's credit scores are declining. Okay, so they're going to be less likely to qualify for some of the A-paper loans out there. So you're seeing they're getting back to what I would call a very normal, healthy rate. Okay, so remember, I talked about the age of indulgence when housing prices went up and everything was great every single year for a decade. We're about at that level right now. You can see from 2009 on this chart all the way to about 2019, 2020. We're about at that level right now, which is a normal, healthy rate. Things got a little crazy during the pandemic. I mean, people were printing money. The government was giving it out to businesses and stuff like that. People were cash heavy and everybody's credit scores went up and they paid stuff off and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably what was the most significant factor with regards to the inflationary issues that the Fed is facing right now. is due to all that money being injected right back into the economy. That's not based on government spending or anything like that. That's not what affects inflation. What affects inflation is money that's put back into the private economy. And that's what happened when $10 trillion was injected into businesses and humans and just to stay alive and pay the bills during the pandemic. All of that happened and that all got injected back into the economy. And, slowly we're recovering and getting back to normal, healthy levels. So it's back to like you have to work to get a 760 plus credit score again. Okay. That's normal, just not what we're used to for the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. You can see because of the mortgage interest rates, an increased number, more than going all the way back to 2018, are sitting on the fences right now waiting to buy in the upcoming year. That's another reason why I think we're going to see an increase in sales. Not only are we going to have inventory, we're going to have a lot more buyers. So we're going to see a lot of competitive offers. It's going to be just more competitive, just as much as a competitive market, because so many have been sitting on the fence to see what's going to happen with mortgage rates. And now they've kind of got used to the new mortgage rates, realizing they're not going to go flying all the way back down again. And they've also seen that housing prices are continuing to go up. So they better get off that fence. So a lot more people, based on Housing Trends Report survey, are planning to buy here in the next 12 months again. Okay. NAR membership, different story here. That has dropped, okay? So we've seen NAR membership drop significantly in 2023. A lot of that has to do with a very, very low amount of inventory and a lot of low sales in 2023. So a lot have not renewed. I didn't put a projection on here because I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but I definitely project 2024 to go down again significantly, because a lot of the people that struggled in 2023 will then in 2024, not renew again because they had a tough 2023 because of low sales. In addition to that, all the commission lawsuits going on are going to create a lot of changes in the real estate industry that might spook a lot of agents out that don't want to change their practices or their organized sales processes to have buyer consultations, to change their talking points in their listing consultations and their buyer consultations to articulate exactly how they are paid. Those that don't want to do that, which blows my mind, will also see further fallout. So I do think in 2024, we're going to see a lot of people. And then there's people that are upset with the way NAR handled the whole thing. So they may just boycott. That's kind of the new age, boycott everything. So who knows? But I do expect 2024 us to have less agents and maybe even 2025 again, based on the way it stands right now. Moving on, total U.S. homeowner equity. Again, housing prices have done nothing but go up. So we are up to like the total homeowner equity is 26.32 trillion. I mean, homeowners have tons of equity in their homes. So again, the chance that people foreclosed upon is crazy. They could sell their houses and make lots of money. A lot of people aren't because they like the low interest rates they got in them. They want to stay in them. But man, people are rich in America right now. That's why we have such high inflation, because they're sitting on lots and lots of equity in their homes, right? And you can see, look at that little housing boom. This is 2005. Boom. And then it went all the way down. And then very, very quickly, they got it all the way back by about 2013, maybe 2014. And then it just didn't. The decade of indulgence happened where housing prices kept going up despite low interest rates. And people made a lot of money in that time. Institutional buyers. Another reason that buyer demand is so strong is lots of people know that there's a housing shortage out there. And when there's a shortage, people want to get their hands on that product, and that product is houses. So you've got tons of institutional buyers buying up all over the place. And you can see throughout the South where home prices are cheaper. In Texas, 28% of home sales were from people that lived outside of the state buying up rental properties in that state. So much so that the state of Texas actually is trying to pass legislation to prevent and or limit the amount of non-state resident buyers buying up the property and driving prices up. So otherwise, and making it hard for home buyers and first-time home buyers to buy it, which is a very unique, you think of Texas as a very conservative state. That is a very liberal law. That's how big it's gotten. And you can see across the country, you have tons of institutional buyers buying up property. That's why oftentimes first-time home buyers are having a hard time competing with these big companies coming in, buying houses at or below the median home price, because they know those are great cash flowing rentals that are going to do nothing but go up in value over time. So a very large percentage, across the country, you're probably looking at an average of somewhere around 12 or 13% of all home sales someone that is not an owner occupied buyer, that's an institutional buyer out there buying to hold and rent for a very long period of time is very prevalent out there, very prevalent. So another reason buyer demand keeps on growing despite a perceived lack of affordability, because these guys can't afford it and they don't even need a mortgage rate. Typically, they're coming in with private equity cash. Okay. So don't forget all the players in the market. And why do they know that? What else are you going to do? Live under a freeway overpass? I mean, rent's going up just as fast. So buyers have to buy because your rent's going up just as fast. I mean, you can see it's just skyrocketing from 2020. Since shelter in place, it's still going up. Rents are increasing across the country. So if buyers are saying, well, they can't afford it, they're going to go rent. Well, that's just as expensive as mortgage payments. And they're seeing no signs of going up either. So unless you're going to be homeless, which is, very small percentage of the population elects that decision, you're really going to pay it one way or the other. And you got to find a way to do it because shelter is a necessity. That's like food and oxygen. Shelter is next. So people say buyers aren't going to buy because they can't afford it. They got no choice. And that's what the smart money knows. That's what these guys, these institutionals, these big companies know. They get it. It's the teachers and the firemen and the people that aren't in the know in business and real estate that are sitting and waiting, and it's getting harder and harder for them each year. They sit and wait on the fence. It's our job as professionals to get them off the fence, and we use these slides to show them that. Okay. And you can see as a result, that gap in net worth is widening. Down here, these are the people that continue to rent across the bottom. You can see their net worth is all based on how much money's in their checking account. They got 5,000, 5,000. In 2024, they're maybe up to 11,000 after a decade. Whereas the person that bought back in 2010, their net worth all the way up to 422,000 based on and that's just based on their house. The value of their house going up. Their net worth is huge. And you go into big states, like New York City or the whole state of California, really. I mean, you see how can these people afford it? Well, it's because they got in the game early and they just let their houses make them wealthy, and then they'd sell that house and take $1 million out of that and buy a $3 million house, and they put that 1 million down to buy a $3 million house, and then that goes up in value, and then they take 2.5 million out of that to buy an $8 million house. They're making not much more money than anybody else, but their houses are making them so wealthy because they're smart. They're investing in real estate and they're not sitting on the fence. You can see over a 10-year period, that person that waited for housing prices to go down, I mean, the difference is almost $500,000. We're looking at $411,000 there, a difference in net worth for the people that just bought real estate, because they looked at those charts showing that over the years, housing prices really just go up. Even the Great Recession was just a small dip. Right? So we've got to educate our people and show them that the best time to buy real estate is right now. The second best time to buy real estate is tomorrow. And the third best time is the day after that. Don't wait for anything. Housing prices have been going up and have no choice but to continue to do so for the immediate future, as we've shown you. Now, one thing I think is really important with regards to new changes coming down in the way we practice based upon the National Association of Realtors settlement agreement and all the other major brand settlement with plaintiffs in a lot of commission lawsuits, people are worried that buyers agents aren't going to get paid as much. And a lot of that's going to start with the sellers understanding and listing agents setting proper expectations with sellers that if they want to get the highest price and the highest amount of proceeds, we do want to try to help out and pay the buyer's agents in some way. We want to offer some compensation to them. Here's why. And especially in a time with low inventory too, when it's hard to even find a home for sale and then be able to know how to write a really, really intelligent offer that gets it accepted. If we look back almost in 2023, 89% of home buyers, despite low inventory, when sellers controlled everything, 89% of home buyers used a buyer's agent. And the ones that didn't were just because of FSBO sellers and builders who have their own builders agents. So, we're probably looking closer to 100% of people. So as sellers, are we really marketing to the public? Or are we marketing to buyer's agents? And what they're telling us now is that they don't want us to put compensation in the MLS, which, okay, but that doesn't mean we can't offer it on our own websites or in our marketing materials. So we can go out there and offer, hey, we'll pay you 3% agents. And all of a sudden you're being competitive, or, hey, we'll pay you 2% agents, or whatever that percentage is. Those are negotiable, right? So whatever number you want to make, you just talk to your agent about what amount is competitive in your area, and make sure you're at that competitive amount or above it even, or below it. Again, negotiable. But if you want to be competitive, the name of the game as a seller is to get the maximum exposure for your house. And I'm telling you, agents are helping their clients. They want us now to compensate individually. There's a strong, strong argument that buyers agents going to get paid more now because we got to openly market to them on a case by case basis. We can't put a fixed amount in MLS. Now we got to get out there and advertise what we're going to pay buyers agents and see which one brings us the strongest buyers and the most buyers as a result of that marketing. So to set that expectation with our sellers up front, we need to explain to them the vast majority of buyers use a buyer's agent. And if we want them to be motivated to show our property, that's what the settlement wants us to do now, is motivate, individually, and have it all be negotiable. It's going to be up to the seller to decide how much they want to compensate. Do they want to be competitive or not? Based on looking at this data. And that's the way they want to do it. That's the way it's going to be, right? We can't hate the player or the game. We just got to play it. Buyer agency agreement. Another big important stat I want you guys as agents to know here, because of all these settlement terms. Understand, before the settlement, this shocks me because it drives me nuts. This is what I love the settlement for. In 2023, only 41% of agents used a written agreement to outline how much they were going to get paid by representing the buyer. That is horribly low. And we need to get better. Now we have to use buyer agency agreements where we clearly explain how much we're going to get paid at the outside of the agency relationship, which means no more just driving down the street, throwing someone in a car, showing a house, getting them all excited, having them write an offer, and then them not even knowing how you're getting paid, or telling them I'm not getting paid at all. The seller pays me. That doesn't happen anymore because that's not honest, because your commission is baked into that price, right? Now it's not baked into the price. So we need to sit down and explain that I'm going to get compensated by the seller. And you're going to pay me if they don't. And we're going to try to add it to the price, or we're going to try to get them to pay it, and all the different options we can use for that buyer's agents get paid. So for agents that have been used to using that, the 41% in 2023, they're used to using exclusive buyer agency agreements. We're going to need to use them now. Or if you're a buyer's agent, you're worried about them going direct to the seller, well, then sit down, have a consultation, and get an exclusive buyer's agency agreement written up so they can't do that, so they know that they're agreeing to pay you for you to show them property. I mean, think about it. Nothing has changed here. I mean, unless you're one of the agents that didn't do this and you show them 10 properties and then they go buy directly from a builder somewhere and you wonder why you didn't get paid. Well, you never sat down and told them they needed to. You never clearly outlined your expectations, and you certainly didn't get them to sign and agree to it. So don't get hurt by calling them disloyal when they didn't do that. They don't know. That is the one thing I can tell you. They didn't know. That is the one thing. The confusion of how agents get paid has always been out there. People just didn't know how it worked, and they honestly didn't. And that's probably why this crazy lawsuit was settled for such a high amount anyways, to straighten that out so the consumer has a clue. So this is one part of it I strongly agree with. We need to be professional, just like a doctor. When I come in, I go through their sales process. I come in, they check my vitals. Even though I know what's wrong with me, I get weighed, they stick lights in my ears and my nose and tongue and wood things in my mouth and all of that. And then they sit down and they ask me questions. I don't come in and dictate how this is done. Right? And good agents do the exact same thing. They act like professionals. Otherwise, that doctor would be out on the street corner just giving out free prescriptions, giving out scripts. That's terrible, without even doing their, sitting there checking them out or diagnosing the problem or anything. Same thing. We should sit down with our clients, find out what their needs are, find out what their motivations are, find out why, explain to them the market, explain to them the stats, use some of the slides I've shown you, and then explain how the process is going to work, and then explain how much they're going to pay you, like a normal professional would, a normal accountant would, a normal lawyer would, a normal doctor would. If you want to call yourself a professional, then do this. Don't be afraid of this. Do this, okay? So please use a written agreement Trust me, from someone that coaches and his company coaches some of the highest producing agents, teams, and brokerages across the country. All the top producing agents do this. The ones that don't do this, the what is that, 49% that didn't do this in 2023, those are the lower producers. Those are the lower producers. Do what the top producers do. Okay. Now, another thing I want you to please understand here is look at how home sellers found their listing agents. Okay. 39% of them were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. Okay. That's your sphere of influence. The next 26% of them, it was a past client. That's your sphere of influence. Okay. So right there, we are talking at, what is that? 39% plus 26%. That is 65% of all home sales were from your sphere of influence. Then the drop off is to your website, which is 5%. Okay. Someone you prospected and just called on the phone, 4%. Referred by another agent, 4%, agent referrals. Open house, 3%. Direct mail, 2%. These are all people you didn't know. Okay. All the way down. Now, all these things work and I like them all. Don't get me wrong. I love prospecting for FSBOs and expireds. I love all that, but it's just a small percentage. When the big percentage comes from the people you already knew or the people who knew the people you already knew. This is why we spend so much time telling you to do the boring stuff. And what's the boring stuff? The boring stuff is working your sphere of influence, staying in communication, adding value to them, constantly reaching out, because that's where the bulk of all sales come from, your sphere of influence. It's not from prospecting for business from people you don't know. We tend to really push an emphasis on prospecting for business from people you don't know when you don't have a big SOI yet. And it works very well, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of effort and it's for a very small percentage of sales. It's when you get the big numbers, when you build a big, strong sphere of influence. That's why that should always be the focus. It should be a combination of business you do know, business from people you do know, and business from people you don't know. But we're always trying to get you up here where you're a referral-based business first and foremost, okay? That's why, because the bulk of sales come from that. And that's from the National Association of Realtors profile of home buyers and sellers. Okay? And again, here's why. Follow-up is so darn important. So often we close on a commission and we, maybe reach out once the next year to see how things are doing. Guys, this is absolutely crazy where we're looking at numbers here where the vast majority of home buyers said they definitely would use their past agents. They actually liked the agent they worked with. And then an even bigger number said probably. Okay, we're getting up here into the 95 percentile, right? That said they probably would use them, okay? And it isn't, but a small percent that said probably not or definitely not. So we're getting up into well above, 90% of home buyers said they would use their past agent. So are we following up 30 days after closing, 90 days after closing, on the anniversary of their home sale? Are we continue to add value? Do we have them in a touch system in our CRM database so that we're constantly inviting them to client events, community events, checking in on them, seeing if we can help, seeing if we can get them connected with any of our vendors to help them with any improvements they're doing, and constantly staying in touch? Because if we stay in touch, we'll be first of mind, because most people say they want to use us again. So it's those repeat referral clients that we get through our sphere of influence. It's how we build our sphere of influence, our SOI, over time. So follow-up is the key. And that's crucial. That's why I'm showing these slides right now, because despite everything that's going on in the interest rate industry with mortgage rates, low inventory, changes to the way we do business because of lawsuits and settlements, the same old thing holds true. Keep your head down. Focus on building and adding value to the people in your SOI. Either cultivate and grow your SOI or add value to the people that are already in it, and we will all be absolutely fine. I hope this Q2 industry update helps. Can't wait to see what the rest of 2024 has in store. Thanks again, guys.